It's going to be a fun one. All right, so it looks like we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. Today might be our last episode on YouTube because we're going to be touching some, I guess you would call them controversial topics. But that's why you're here, because some people are willing to speak the truth, other people aren't, and that's probably why we continuously battle YouTube and the censorship and the strikes and all that stuff. But today we're going to be talking about Supreme Court nominee Ketanji Jackson. I think that's how you pronounce her name. How she has very light sentencing whenever given the opportunity on the pedophilia, or people with child porn or whatever. I don't know exactly the cases. I didn't look into them too much, but enough to be pretty much appalled by that. And then she was in the news also, a clip going around of like her not being able to define a woman. And she's saying that she is not a biologist and therefore can't define it. And so this again speaks to the, trust the experts. You got to be a biologist in order to define a woman. You got to be Black in order to talk about Black people. You got to be a woman to be able to talk about women. And I think it's just a way to shut down the conversation. So we're going to have that conversation. And, maybe this will live on YouTube. Maybe it won't. Could be our last episode, but hang on for the ride, so to speak. All right. So anything to add before we get started?
Yeah, just, most of our shows just are not on YouTube. So get over to Rumble. I'm going to put some clothes on my son here so he's not running around behind me naked.
Right.
I don't want to be sentenced by, well, I guess I do want to be sentenced by our new court justice if I get in trouble for this. But yeah, get over to Rumble. Check us out over there. YouTube obviously is censoring, as you all know. And most of our stuff does not stay on YouTube. So thanks for joining us. Happy to be back 2 days in a row. Consistency, baby.
Yeah, there we go. All right. So we are going to start with, and this will all hopefully tie together in the end. But so right now, we're going to start with a quote from Malcolm X. The white liberals who have been posing as our friends have failed us. The white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the Black man. White liberals are those who have perfected the art of selling themselves to the Black man as our friend to get our sympathy, our allegiance, and our minds. The white liberal attempts to use us politically against white conservatives so that anything the Black man does is never for his own good, never for his own advancement, never for his own progress. He's only a pawn in the hands of the white liberal. All right. So with that as the backdrop, he goes on to say, the Democrats are playing you for a political chump. If you vote for them, not only are you a Trump, but you're a traitor to your race. And 2 days later, he was assassinated. So with this,
I've heard that quote many times. I didn't know it was close to a final quote. That's
yeah. Well, yeah. And all right. So we have that as the backdrop. And now we are going to see Joe Biden. And what is Joe Biden doing to fix race relations? So Joe Biden promises to pledge to put a Black woman on the Supreme Court. Now, on the surface, you could say, oh, well, that's fantastic. That's, we get representation for different races and all that stuff. But I think if you put the historical context into perspective, then you kind of start seeing a pattern of the sort of white liberal making these sort of affirmative action type of appointments and type of policies. And in my opinion, what it actually does is, rather than lift up the people that they're supposedly trying to help, it actually weakens them by saying that you don't necessarily need to be as good. You can just get by on your gender or skin color or race or whatever it is. And doesn't matter that you might not be as qualified or whatever. Because what he didn't say is, I'm going to put the most qualified person on, or I'm going to nominate the most qualified person on the Supreme Court. And then, a couple weeks or months go by, and then he nominates a Black woman, and, totally fine. And it just happens to be a Black woman who's the most qualified person in his eyes. No, that's not what he did. What he did is I'm going to make a point to nominate a Black woman to the Supreme Court, regardless of qualifications. And so there you go. And what did he do with his vice president? Presumptive Democratic nominee. This is from 2020 during the presidential race. Presumptive Democrat nominee Joe Biden said he was considering 4 Black women to be his running mate, and has been receiving extensive vetting briefings about each potential candidate. So there you go. So, and then, so he goes on to nominate Kamala Harris, who has, I think the lowest approval ratings of any vice president in the history of vice presidents. I'd have to be fact checked on that, but she's pretty down there.
If she beat Dick Cheney, that would be impressive.
Yeah, right. So there you have sort of the backdrop of what's going on. And I would argue that the coddling and artificially artificial coddling of the Black community has actually done more to harm them than it has to help them. The welfare programs, the fact that there were so many, the Great Society under Lyndon Johnson essentially took the father out of the home, out of the Black home. And people like Thomas Sowell and those types of people say, the progressive policies have done more to break up the Black family than slavery ever could. And now you have instances where I think it's 78% of Black children are born out of wedlock. And the statistics on children raised in single mother homes are just, they're just awful. I mean, it's the biggest predictor for crime, for just a whole host of negative outcomes, whether it's crime, drugs, gangs, all types of things. Not graduating high school, not being able to get a job, being raised by a single mother is the biggest predictor for negative outcomes. And I think that the incentives to remove the husband from the home has done more to destroy the Black family than anything ever could. I mean, Thomas Sowell, he's a famous Black economist. He said that, Walter E. Williams, and it's recognized by a lot of, I guess, Black conservatives, but, Black liberals are still supporting that cause. But I think the tide is shifting. Anyways, your thoughts?
Yeah, and again, right, all that stuff bears out, statistically. So it's not, you only really can debate those things if you have your head buried in the sand, because we now have 70 years almost of results, right, of what the welfare state has done to the I hate the word Black community. It's absurd. Yeah. But it's words matter, right? And it's important, I think, to differentiate between things and define things. So I want to go back to that Malcolm X quote for a second, right? So what happens is we have very smart people with dark agendas who create a context, and they play on people's emotions, they play on people's sort of lower emotions, like base emotions. They play on people's wounds and scars and fears and insecurities, and they also play on people's good hearts, right? And people generally speaking are good, and they want good outcomes, and they want to see other people doing well in general, right? And so what you have is you have very smart people at the top, so to speak, who then massage through the academic institutions, through the media, through the schools, through papers and conferences and non-governmental organizations and so on and so forth, and they create these narratives. The narratives then, if they're successful, which they usually are, and this is sort of the, I think it was it Noam Chomsky, right, who I disagree with on everything, but is a decent researcher, who talked about manufactured consent, right? If it's done well, then it shapes the narrative, it shapes really the direction of society, it shapes the culture, and so on and so forth. So when we hear Malcolm X, and this is true of all things, and I want to differentiate, right? When we hear Malcolm X talk about the white liberal, what I would argue he should be talking about, I have no idea what he was actually talking about, but what I would argue he should be talking about, right, are the people at the top who are creating the narrative, because their intentions are evil, right? Then what happens is the rank and file, everybody else, the sheeple, so to speak, right? They get caught up in, they're the ones being played, right? So they're the ones who then get caught up in this narrative, and they then are unknowingly working for evil in the name of good, right? In the name of equality, of equal outcomes, of fairness and justice, and all these kinds of things. And I think it is important to recognize that, right? Because it's like liberals are not evil in their hearts. They're confused, right? They've been played, and it's sad, right? It's like and again, right, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So okay, so it's not something you get to not be responsible for either. But it's only at the very top that the negative intentions are there. I sort of go back to a similar point about I hear people a lot talk about the Jews, right? People are always saying the Jews, talking about sort of this conspiracy, right? The cabal, the big, and there's some truth to that, in the sense that, the cabal pretended to be Jews going back 100-something years, 140 years or something. They said, okay, we're going to now pretend to be Jews, and we're going to use the Jews, quote unquote, in order to implement some of our nasty plans, right? So World War II and Israel and socialism, right? Communism, socialism. This was implemented through the cabal, who were pretending to be Jewish, right? A religion. So and there's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, I'm not prepared to have that conversation today. I studied this about 12 years ago. But but then people get stuck in that narrative, right? And are like, the Jews, it's a Jew, the Jews, right? Well, it's Zionist, it's the cabal, right? It's evil people who are using a religion to create, hey, this religion can't be talked bad about, it's untouchable, and we're going to create that so that we can do evil shit. But it's important to differentiate, right? You're Jews walking around, right? You're people who are Jewish, like it's a religion, they have no idea about any of this. They're just living their life. Like, they're not evil. And so I think like words and definitions matter. The other thing I want to touch on really quickly is the dependence thing, right? So that's to me what's almost like, it's as evil as you can get, because the human soul comes into the lifetime, and there's lessons to be learned. And if the lessons aren't learned, there's no evolution, and the human soul has to come back and do it again. And that's and at the highest levels, in my opinion, that's part of the game that's being played, is to trap human souls in this repeating cycle. So the dependence, right, is a huge part of that, because if you can make somebody dependent on handouts, you essentially steal their soul from them, because they then do not have the opportunity to advance, because they're dependent on your handouts and therefore don't have to do anything. And in fact, don't want to do anything because they'll lose the handout. So the evil of socialism, the evil of welfare, the evil of, all of these things, is that it takes a human life and cuts it off at the roots almost, right? It puts talk about a glass ceiling, right? It puts a ceiling above somebody's head that says, well, if you go any higher, we're going to take this away from you. So stay there. That's literally what's being said. And so from there, the outcomes are predictable, right? You have the projects, right? Anyone who's ever spent any time in the projects in any city in America knows how awful that is, and just what kind of lives in general are being led in these places. It's not good, right? And then it leads to all the outcomes that you're talking about, where they actively and intentionally destroyed the Black family. The statistics all bear that out. Then the results of children being raised in broken families are not good, as you pointed out. And this, this is really evil. The rank and file, sort of sheep who has gone along with this, they're normally doing it out of the goodness of their heart, right? And it really gets back to the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? They want to see good outcomes for people. Oh, this person's poor. Let's give them some stuff so they're not poor, right? That makes sense until you think it through and understand what that does.
Yeah. A bunch of points to go over. So when I I don't know if mock is the right term, but when I say that, the white liberal, and then list some things that Malcolm X said about that, and they're negative, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that conservatives or Republicans are good, and therefore if we just got those damn Democrats out of office and elected a bunch of Republicans, everything would be sunshine and roses. That is not what I'm saying at all. So if
we just had more Lindsey Grahams, we'd be
right,
awesome.
Lindsey, yeah, and Mitch McConnell. If Mitch McConnell was in charge, it would all be perfect. So no, that is not what we're saying. Number two, so yeah, your point about the Jews, yes, it happens to be that a lot of the heads of banks and heads of pharmaceutical companies happen to be Jewish. Now, that doesn't mean that your average, person who's Jewish walking around on the street wants to put you in $150,000 worth of debt to get a gender studies degree, and then you'll, essentially be in debt slavery for the rest of your life. No, your average Jewish person does not want to do that. That is, so yes, your point about separating the two, absolutely spot on. So don't want any confusion about that. But then, yeah. And then at the same time, though, it takes a real in-depth understanding of economics to really understand the outcomes of these types of policies. And, I think there's a famous quote that says, not one person in 1,000 can recognize the causes of inflation. And so I think it was Keynes who said that. And, then he said, well, in the long run, we're all dead anyways. So what does it matter if we print off, a bunch of money? So yeah, bunch of qualifiers to this, but yeah, I think the point is that the agenda wants certain things to happen, and that doesn't mean that the everyday person is in line with that agenda if they knew what the agenda was. And so absolutely correct that we do need to make a delineation between the people at the top and the rank and file people who just want better outcomes for people who may not know how to get them or the negative repercussions of some of the policies that they support. So yes, good points there. And now let's dig into a little bit more detail about Ketanji Brown Jackson over her troubling records of lenient sentencing for pedophiles, unless there's anything you want to add before we go on to that. All right, so for this, let's go to a video. Whoops, hang on. I forgot to share sound. All right. So this is Senator Josh Hawley. I think he's from Missouri. Yes, from Missouri. Focused his questioning on the alarming trend of lenient sentencing in child pornographic cases that he first mentioned in a tweet thread last week.
I know you know which ones I want to talk about. The 7 cases, child pornography cases, in which you had discretion. They came before you. You had discretion to sentence one way or another in these 7 cases. Not every case, of course, do you have discretion. Sometimes the law requires you to impose a sentence, certain sentence. But in these 7, you had discretion, and in each of these 7, you chose to depart both from the federal guidelines and also from the government's, the prosecutor's recommendations. Senator Lee's asked you a little bit about this. Senator Cruz has asked you about it. He had a chart with the 7 cases on it. Before we jump into those, I just want to correct the record on 1 or 2 things. Senator Coons suggested that in 3 cases, Nickerson, Wynn, and Fife, you actually imposed sentences either within the guidelines or at the same level of the prosecution. But in Nickerson, you didn't have any discretion. That was an 11C1C case. The law bound you. And Wynn wasn't a child porn case, and neither was Fife. Just one other quick thing to clarify. As to this...
So let's go to the tweet thread. He's basically saying Judge Jackson has a pattern of letting child porn offenders off the hook for their appalling crimes, both as a judge and as a policymaker. She's been advocating for it since law school. This goes beyond soft on crime. I'm concerned that this is a record that endangers our children. Then he goes on, as far back as her time in law school, Judge Jackson has questioned making convicts register as sex offenders, saying it leads to stigmatization and ostracism. She suggested public policy is driven by a climate of fear, hatred, and revenge against sex offenders. And that seems troubling to say the least. And if you put this together with what I believe is the bigger agenda, sort of the cabal and where it wants to get to. I think they want to get to a place where pedophilia is essentially normalized and out in the open. And I think if you look at a lot of the policies, including masking of children and the age at which they teach, I guess you call it sex ed in schools these days, and the type of stuff that they're teaching in schools these days. I mean, it's to the point where you really can't put your children in public schools anymore. I mean, it's way more than you would want any of your children to be. So I'll leave it there for now for your comments.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention, a lot of 5G has gone into schools, and who knows at what point they'll just be running medical experiments without parental consent, right, at schools. and then anyone who's, I don't want to dive into this too much, but anyone who's spent any amount of time around homeschooled kids, at least for me, I'm always so impressed by how they don't have all the weird behavior that kids have, that's like we've just come to think is what kids are, but really is not. It's just what happens to them in school. When kids are homeschooled, they shake your hand, they look you in the eye, they can hold an adult conversation at 8 years old, right? Like, and when they're in public school, they have all the weirdness that, we all had growing up, and the rebelliousness and, all the rest of it. Yeah, I mean, interesting, right? So not very long ago, a Supreme Court nominee with that kind of track record on sex crimes would be dead in the water, right? It would be a withdrawal, an apology from the administration, and a, you know, we didn't know, we didn't do a good job vetting, you know, and they would nominate someone else. So we've changed here dramatically in the last, I don't know how many years. It seems like everything very accelerated at this point. Just the fact that, you know, those kinds of things could be an issue for a Supreme Court nominee and the nomination go forward is very telling. You know, the other thing, right, is that we're in the great reveal here. So I just always come back to that. I just look at everything that's happening as part of God's plan and as positive, because the controllers, the would-be controllers, the you know, the sort of Satan's minions, right? They're on full display, and that's part of just the time we're in and what's happening, and that is completely positive. So we have, you know, an administration where, you know, where the figurehead of that administration is on camera dozens of times, you know, sniffing women's and children's ears and hair and back of their necks and touching them inappropriately, and, you know, doing all kinds of just beyond creepy grandpa stuff, beyond dirty old man stuff, you know, stuff that like a father would punch your lights out, right, if they saw you doing that to their kid. And potentially mothers and others would call the cops, or, you know, things like that, right? It's not just like, oh, that's creepy. It's no, it's beyond that, right? So that's the figurehead, you know, in the administration, and we've got all, you know, enormous amounts of evidence, which obviously I don't have to go into, and this is on YouTube, so I'll keep it gentle. But, you know, we have enormous amounts of information, documentaries, so on and so forth. Well, I could probably mention, you know, the pizza phenomenon, right? That all came out. So we have, you know, we've got the evidence is all out and it's all there. And it's that administration, it's in that context that we have a Supreme Court nominee who's, you know, who's defending publicly, like actually verbally defending sex offenders, saying, oh, you know, that they shouldn't be stigmatized, right? How dare we, you know, make them register, and so on and so forth. So again, we're in the great reveal. So the broader context to me, you know, the esoteric thing here is that the what's always been is now being able to be seen. And so people's choice then is much more real, because the darkness is not hidden. The darkness is on full display. And so people who are going to continue to bury their head in the sand and go along with that are going to have to do so with full knowledge, or at least the opportunity to have full knowledge. And ultimately, esoterically, again, right, it's just part of the process. It's part of the apocalypse, you know, all that is hidden coming to light. And, you know, it's a to me completely a positive development, because all of this stuff has to come down, right? We can't continue to live under lies and falsehoods and, you know, the inverse world, the matrix, right? We have to go back to truth, back to God. And so part of that process, right, is everything being seen and then being taken down, and we're in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've been essentially trying to normalize this for a long time. I think the LGBT, you know, Q, and then all the other letters, I think it's part of normalizing P. You know, I think they're trying to get to P to normalize that. And they've been trying this for a long time. So, and in kind of subtle ways. So this is an article from 2017. It's from Vice magazine. I think it's sort of a news aggregator site. So written by Alexander McBride Wilson. I spent a year living with, quote, non-offending pedophiles. This online community calls themselves virtuous pedophiles because most of them claim to have never sexually engaged with a minor. They also claim they never intend to. So it was early spring 2015 when I headed from London to the US to spend a week with Gary. He was the first of several self-identifying, non-offending pedophiles living in America who I had arranged to stay with and photograph as part of an attempt to understand and document what it means to be attracted to minors. Gary is a member of an online community of people who feel this sexual attraction, which we do not choose, according to Gary and others in the community, just as a heterosexual or homosexual person is drawn to people of a particular gender. They find themselves attracted to either boys or girls within a specific age ranges below the legal age of consent. They call themselves virtual pedophiles, or VERPED for short, because the vast majority of them claim to have never gone down the path of sexually engaging with a minor. They also claim they never intend to. So this is, in my opinion, this is just another way where they're trying to normalize this behavior, normalize this, I would say, perversion. I don't think that's a stretch to say that. And it's been going on for a while. It's very subtle, but if you understand and know about the larger agenda, I think you can put those into context and see what's really going on and why they're doing this. I think it's to normalize it to the point where they can do this out in the open and nobody's going to bat an eye.
Yeah, and we've seen that evidence of that, right? Like, again, if you went back 5 years and said that, this would be a shocking comment. And then what happened? Articles started coming out, like the one you just pointed out, so, literally on the road to normalizing pedophilia. So it's not, this is not a theory anymore. This is what they're doing. And so, yeah, I mean, there's no question about that. And again, who are these people, right? Who are in favor of this kind of thing? Is this on the side of God? Is this on another side? Where would that sort of idea and energy come from? I mean, is this important to you, right? Like, is this, listening, or you, Asher, or me, or right? Like, is this a cause that, we would take up? Like, hey, we should really be nicer to pedophiles, is this right? Is this like
I have a lot of other causes that are rank higher on the list.
Right. Is this like a worthy cause? I mean, I would argue, that, yeah, I mean, I would come down right probably completely on the as far on the other direction as that as we can. I'd probably be in favor of, chemical castration or some such thing, but or maybe just physical castration. But yeah, I mean, and I'm kind of joking about that because I'm not a statist, and I don't like, the state doing much, but but yeah, so again, it's part of the reveal. So it's like people have to decide, what energy signature or what energy source do they want to come from and be in favor of and support. Is like, the people who are like, hey, pedophilia is really okay. Like, is that your team? I don't know. Maybe it is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think the whole trans kids movement, that was big a couple of years ago, where everyone was saying, "Oh, isn't it wonderful that my son now identifies as a girl," and all that stuff. It's like, they're going down to age 3, 4, 5, and they're starting this stuff, and it's like, I have a 4-year-old, and he says he's a monster truck every once in a while. He says he's a dinosaur or something like that. That doesn't, these children that age don't have the mental capacity to think about that conceptual, that they just can't have that. They don't have the abstract thinking abilities to conceptualize what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman. They just don't have that ability at that age, but yet we have, a lot of people in Hollywood and people out there are saying, my son, he's a girl and all that stuff. And it's just like, it's sick, it's satanic. I do think it's part of that, that normalizing of pedophile agenda to sexualize young children. And, if it's me, with my children, I am, trying to keep them as innocent as possible for as long as I can. And, it's just, yeah, I mean, people have, you get attacked for coming out against this. You get attacked for, speaking out against this. And, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if this is going to be our last episode on YouTube, because, they're supportive of this agenda. And, it's bad news if you speak out against it, but someone's got to do it.
Yeah. And isn't that interesting, right? It's like we're to the point where there's social pressure to be evil, to believe in evil, to be evil, to act in evil ways, to support evil. There's accepted social pressure to do that. Mm-hmm. Wow. Yep. Like what a state of affairs that we're in. I know, the Bible talks about a lot of this stuff extensively, in sort of the end days and the persecution and people, the chosen ones having to sort of flee into the mountains and all this kind of stuff, right? Because, as the matrix collapses, that's going to get pretty desperate. And the people in charge are, in my opinion, evil, like really, really evil. And so as that agenda plays out at the same time that sort of the world is ending in a certain context, right? That's going to get very desperate. That is not, I would pull out of that if you have the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. Bob and Ann says the trans kid agenda is about taking parental rights away from parents, the same as the injection agenda. They're the same agenda. Yeah, I would agree. I think also the trans agenda is about like removing your rights as a living man or a living woman. If you claim to be a living man on the land, and the whole natural law thing and can speak to that, you will go far in terms of not being subject to a lot of things. I'm not an expert in this field, but I know enough to know that a living man has rights, and a trans whatever, or a zer or a z or whatever they're calling themselves, they do not have the same rights as a living man or a living woman. And so I think that's part of it as well. If you can identify as something that's not a living man or a living woman, then they can say, well, we're in charge here, and you have to do as we say. Same thing with injecting technology into your body that has a unique genetic code that's been patented. Who owns the patent, and therefore who owns you? I mean, there's some legal questions that I wouldn't be surprised if we have to face, or not we, but other people have to face in the coming years. And so, yeah, it's all the same agenda. Firmly agreed. Rezu says, we received weekly letter from the teacher that our girl 13 years old, she told us that some of the girls in the class want to make a rule to not give compliments to each other because it might hurt each other. Yeah, I mean, right. So I mean, it's this mindset. It's like this communistic mindset where you have to hammer down the tall nail. You have to push everyone down so that nobody feels bad, so that nobody's left out. And nobody succeeds in that environment. Everyone has to be equally at the bottom. equally, despondent and desperate and failures. Otherwise, success is something that could offend or make other people feel bad. And so it's a race to the bottom. And societies, especially in the West, I mean, we are racing to the bottom as fast as we can get there. And so it's all part of the same agenda. They are masters at, human behavior and being able to push levers to get desired behavior and desired outcomes. And they've hacked the human mind, I would say. And so we just have to recognize it. Goes back to our episode yesterday, and just about every time we talk about this thing, get out of that mindset, get out of that system, build your communities, build your life outside of that system. And it doesn't affect us. This doesn't affect me or my family, but I want to put this out there because it can affect other people. And if other people wake up to the agenda, they can make better decisions in their lives. And so, that's why I'm trying to talk about it.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that piece for a minute because the solutions, right, are more interesting. It's like we know what's going on, right, and probably most of the people watching this know what's going on. So we're interacting with some sort of holographic reality. It's some sort of like playground for consciousness, where your consciousness, your beliefs, your consciousness, your vibration, is reflected back to you, and so you go through this experience on Earth where your soul has sort of like a set of parameters or goals, and some of that is set up by astrology and things like that. But it has a set of parameters, goals, and it's kind of partly what people talk about, understand to be destiny, right? Is there's certain parameters in place when you come into the lifetime, and you go through that. And you learn, right? You learn, you get lessons, so on and so forth. Within that, it seems very real, right? It seems physical and real. And so your mind adapts to that. You're talking about your 4-year-old who doesn't have that same level of understanding of the quote unquote realness of the reality, right? They can't define what this is and what that is. But as we get older, we get really good at that, right? And we can define everything based on our perception of it, which is that it's physical and solid and real, and it has rules and all this stuff. But then we get into epigenetics, and we get into, all these people studying consciousness and studying reality. And we also learn from all sorts of examples that are constant, and I have them in my personal life as well, but they're constant if you want to look at them externally, of the rules not being actually rules, right? Of there being holes in these so-called rules. And then, then we shift into understanding, oh, wait a minute, we're actually having our beliefs reflected back to us. We're actually having, right, our consciousness reflected back to us. And so once you understand that, now there's space. So now it's like, now you can get out of the Alex Jones mode, right? Now you can get out of the mode where, oh my gosh, all this stuff is happening. They're so powerful. What do? We better prepare. Because that's the belief in the physical. That's the belief in the rules, right? That's the belief in like, this is happening. It's real. I have to, it's going to happen because they're doing it, which is true on that level. But if you understand that, well, yes, there's a reality playing out like that. And then there's also almost an unlimited number of other realities, including everybody's individual experience. Well, then what you realize as your beliefs shift and you start to understand that, and then therefore experience it, you start to realize that there's holes in that. It's not that simple, right? And so what does that mean? Well, that means that now there's magic, right? Now you have magic at play. Now you don't have to worry about it because you and your journey, your path, you have the way, you have the sliding the thing into place if you're trying to accomplish something, or the stepping out of the way of some weird thing that's going to take place, or damaging thing that's going to take place, or some, jackboot activity, or right. And I think, I have a million examples of this in my personal life, that I could use to illustrate this, but I think people probably understand what I'm talking about. And to me, right, this is the key, because once we understand that, then once with people realizing, oh, we're master creators here. Our beliefs, our vibration, our level of consciousness actually shapes our experience and our reality. And then collectively, we create the collective reality that way. So once you understand that, now this stuff's not so scary anymore, right? So now, now these would-be controllers, they're boogeymen. They're just dark magicians. That's all they are, right? So it's the man behind the curtain. It's the Wizard of Oz, right? So they're up there going like this, ooh, we're so scary. And then people who are caught up in that, which I was for many years and still fall into occasionally, and so on and so forth, people who are caught up in that go, ah, right? They're doing this at my kid's school. They're doing this in the Supreme Court. Biden's doing this, or Trump's doing that, or it's World War III, or they're gonna force us to do this or obligate us to do this. Yeah, they're trying to do all of that stuff, and they're trying to get everybody to buy into that reality. For lots and lots and lots of other people who are elevating their level of consciousness and sort of stepping into the state that we're in now in the world, or that's coming, that's here, that's progressively happening, there's holes in that. So if you're not of that, if you're not in that and of that, you have that way to slide right out, slide right through, step into this other, I would even argue it's like a dimension, right? But step into this other sort of reality that isn't that it's there, because we're still very much connected to that in some capacity. So it's there, but you don't have to experience it. And this is, in my opinion, kind of where we're at in the lessons, right? It's at this level of lesson now that we're progressing towards, or we're at, very quickly here. And that understanding, that sort of master creator understanding, there's a lot of solutions in that. That's how, that's kind of how we get out of this thing, so to speak.
Yeah, good points. And I want to go on to the last sort of subject, and that is, so this kind of plays into the whole the trans agenda and what they're trying to do there. So this is whoops, I didn't share my screen properly. Share sound, got it. All right. So this is Senator Blackburn asks Supreme Court nominee to define woman.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah,
I can't.
you can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the meaning
biologist.
of the word woman.
So she's not a biologist, therefore she cannot define woman. And that goes to, like, if you're not a virologist, how could you talk about viruses? If you're not a scientist, how could you talk about science? And it gets to this whole thing of the expert lie that everyone, that you need to trust the experts, or trust the scientists, or trust the biologists, or trust the virologists to shape your reality for you, and we've lived through 2 years of quote unquote experts defining and shaping the world around, not us, but mainstream, to the point where, we can't do anything unless an expert or a representative of a organization in authority, like the CDC or something like that, goes out and says, well, you can remove your face covering to go inside buildings, or no, you have to put a face covering to go into buildings, or no, you have to get an injection in order to participate in public life. And so there's a couple things at play here. So she refuses to define a woman because once you define what that is, then all the people who are trying to make this gray area of this trans thing, and it's the fluidity thing here, and it's based on the person's individual experiences and whatnot. Once you define what it is, then all that other stuff goes away, and you can't then live in this subjective reality anymore. And so she wasn't going to do it. And that's part of the agenda, and part of how they get to play these games that they're playing, and how they can make rules based on whims, and how they can dictate how society acts and functions based on whatever rules they want to come up with in the here and now. And so if we see this mentality in positions of power, it's going to have very negative effects on life and society. So
yeah. Again, I think, for me, all of these things are just a representation again of just how far we've come towards evil ruling openly. And I don't know. I don't even have much else to say about it. It's on such full display. It's not something I want to participate in, or even, part of it too, right? It's treating the clown show for what it is. It's like we can't, if we're taking them seriously, then we're part of the problem. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's like, I live in Ecuador, where cops, you don't have to take cops seriously here. Right. They're not going to beat you up. They're not going to shoot you. I've seen fist fights between people and cops on multiple occasions where the guy doesn't get arrested after, right? I've seen people many times like blow through checkpoints with the cops are just like, oh, that guy didn't stop. There's no radioing ahead and like a high speed chase, or, nothing like that's going on, right? And of course, cops here will take bribes, no problem. So, if you end up in some sort of issue, it costs you a few bucks. And the negotiation is fun as well. You get to like have the whole thing. And I say that just to illustrate, it's like the whole thing is just a facade, and it's a facade to get you to believe in its legitimacy, right? So very serious people are doing very serious things, right? And you better take this seriously, young man, because we're very serious around here. This is what they do from the time you're a little kid, right? At school, they try to get you to take stuff seriously. We're on a freaking playground for souls, like learning, like, and we've got other morons, who are just in positions of quote unquote authority, who know as much about life or less than we do, who are trying to make us take them seriously. So it's like, we have to recognize these things and just treat everything as it is. Like, oh, a clown is trying to interact with me. Hello, clown. Let's have this interaction. This will be fun, right? Because at the end of the day, they don't have any power. There's no power. None of these people have any power. They're just drones, right? They're brainwashed drones in a clown uniform at a circus doing funny shit. That's at the end of the day what they are. I don't mean at their soul human level. I just mean in their current role, and they should be treated as such. And that's how it ends, right? That's how you break the spell. The magic goes away. It loses its effect. So yeah.
Yeah, well, right. And so you mentioned clowns, and that's a good segue to the next clip I want to show. And it's like, okay, so here are some people that are going to try to define woman. So let's see if we can make any sense of their definition. So,
question. You stood up here and said trans women are women.
Yes.
Tell me what you mean. What is a woman?
Womanhood is something that, just as Ethan explained, I cannot define because I am not
but
myself.
You used the word. So what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it means?
Right. So here's the thing.
Whoops.
Hold on. Pause for 1 second, right? I just need to point out the irony that an effeminate man who talks like a woman, is wearing makeup, has women's earrings, has long hair like a woman, and a beard,
Right.
is having a hard time, is having a hard time defining what a woman is. I mean,
Well, a woman is a woman. I mean, how much how much more clear can you get? So
Explained, I cannot define because I am not
But you
myself.
used the
Hold-
word. So what did you mean when you said trans women are women if you don't know what it
interrupting,
means?
right? So here's the thing. So I do not define what a woman is because I do not identify as a woman. Womanhood is something that is an umbrella term. It includes people
That describes what?
who identify as a woman.
Identify as what?
As a woman.
What is that?
Was to each their own. Each woman, each man, each person is going to have a different relation with their own gender identity and define it differently.
That doesn't-
And so
I'm not
trans
asking-
women
right. Okay.
are
So
women
this
too.
is the type of nonsense stuff that the clown world is all about. Like, trans women are women, but what is a woman? Well, it's a woman. Like how much more clear can you get? And I don't know what he calls himself. Like, I think, so I'm going to just say he, because obviously it's a he. So he's trying to play these word games to get you into, and he's using an emotional argument that says, well, if you identify this, or you embody this, or you have these types of feelings, then you can say that you're a woman. But he then can't have an objective definition that says, I can't remember if it's X or XY chromosome, he can't provide an objective definition, because as soon as you provide an objective definition for what a woman is, then you can say, well, these are all the things that it's not, and these are all the things that it's not. And then we're getting into the realm of like objective truth and reality versus subjective feelings and feelings. Yeah, it's feelings versus objective reality, and those are the two worlds that are sort of clashing right now.
yeah. And I want to just remind people, right? The cabal always eats its own. So,
Yeah.
when Stalin and, when the whole thing happened in communist Russia, right, in the Soviet Union, their own got eaten, right? The intellectuals, the young intellectuals who are at the forefront of that movement ended up in the gulag and then shot in front of a firing squad because they had the inside info. They became dangerous later to the people ruling. They always eat their own. So we're in a transition here, right? Where feminism was used as a progressive sort of piece of the linear line towards the ultimate goals, and they're done with that now, right? Like, feminism has the usefulness of those dupes, right? Have been used up. It was successful, right? Everyone's a feminist now. The whole world is based on the feminist paradigm now. So they're done with that. So now feminism we're already seeing this, right? Feminism and feminists are now becoming the bad people as the cabal eats its own, because in order to be a feminist, you have to believe that women exist. Yeah. and they don't anymore in the new paradigm. The new good guys, like the old good guys were the feminists. The new good guys are men with painted fingernails and dresses and beards, right? Yeah. These are the new good guys. And so the cabal now is going to eat its own, like it always does. And we're going to see sort of the old feminists who are now, they're now the traditionalists, I guess. Right? They're going to be sort of blacklisted and blackballed and called names, and they got to get it together, because we've moved now to the next phase. And when they're done using these idiots, they'll eat them too, right? This is how the devil works, right? You make a contract with the devil and you get rewards on earth, and then it gets your soul, right? This is how it works. So at the end of the day, you get eaten if you go along with this stuff. I'm out, right? I'm out. I don't believe in any of it. Like, I stand in truth. You guys do your thing. Have fun. I'll talk about it if you want. I don't mean you, anybody. I'll talk about it if you want. I'm not all that interested in it. Like, I'm gonna be over here doing my thing, and and like I don't, right. So I don't have to worry about that. They can't eat me. Like I'm not contracting with them. I don't believe in any of their shit.
Yeah. Once feminists destroyed everything that was feminine, they move on to their next target. So this is the British woman's deadlift record holder. He is a rapper, but he identified as a woman while performing the lift. So let's watch him lift. I think it was 700 or 680 pounds he deadlift, but he's identifies as a woman. So this is the female record holder in Britain for the deadlift. Let's. Stunning and brave. Wow, what a model for women everywhere to take after this guy's record and see if they can win back the record for deadlift, because that was pretty strong. Or this William Thomas ranked 462 in men's swimming in college, and he transitions to a woman, and now he's ranked #1 in women's swimming. So that's fun. So there you go.
And good.
Maybe the most prescient point of all comes from Kindergarten Cop, where a young boy, I know he's an actor, but I think in my eyes would correctly identify the difference between boys and girls, men and women, and here we go.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
There you go. Truer words have never been spoken. And I think we'll leave it there for today. Well, I'll let you make the last point and then we'll get going.
No, that's it, man. That was a good finish. I'll keep my babbling for another day.
All right. So if you don't see us on YouTube anymore, you know what happened. Get over to Rumble. Please like, share, and subscribe, especially over on Rumble. We're gonna eventually get over there. And yeah, so great chatting with you today. Controversial topic to say the least, but I think we made it through. So any last words?
I guess you can't say like girl power anymore. That would be racist.
Well, I think that's racist. Yes, that's all right. Enjoy the show for what it is, and that might be the takeaway from all this stuff, is to remove yourself from that world, let the clowns do the clown show, and we're going to live our lives and have a good time and build our communities, grow our gardens, and enjoy life, and the clown show will continue over there. So with that, I will say good day. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.